Welcome to the Spoon Podcast, where we talk to the builders and makers on the front lines of the food tech revolution. I'm your host, Michael Wolf. Today's guest is Steve Statler, who's the CEO of AMB.AI. And this podcast goes deep into stuff I used to talk a lot about when I had my own podcast about the smart home called The Smart Home Show. And I thought it was pretty relevant because what's happening today with the world of IoT and how AI is now fusing into IoT, it's changing what's happening in the food supply chain. And ultimately, it's going to change what happens in our homes with regards to how we track food freshness, etc. So I thought I'd bring Steve on the podcast and talk about that. It's a really interesting and fun conversation. Gets a little nerdy on the networking stuff, but I think you're going to enjoy it. And if you are someone who is involved or thinks about food supply chains, you should definitely listen to this podcast. So check it out. Steve is the CEO, as I said, of AMB.AI. He also has his own podcast called the Mr. Beacon Podcast. So check that out. We'll have the link in the show notes and let us know what you think. All right, let's get to our conversation with Steve Statler. All right, tell us who you are and what you do.
Hey there, Michael. Well, it's a pleasure to be on The Spoon. I'm Steve Statler. I am the CEO and co-founder of AMB.AI, which is short for Ambient Artificial Intelligence. And we're a software company acknowledging the fact that AI is about to escape the virtual world of Shakespeare and sonnets that it's helping us write to actually connect to the physical world. And we want to help do it right with some guardrails, some boundaries, some control for both brands that make things and for people whose data is being sucked into this massive brain that will soon be smarter than all of us put together.
But stepping back, you also have a podcast talking about AI because you have been in this space for a while, going back to Qualcomm and then also with Willot. Talk a little bit about your journey into this space and why you've kind of become a guy who is an expert on this idea of ambient AI and kind of ambient IoT, et cetera.
Well, it kind of started with me falling in love with America. You can tell from my accent, I grew up in the UK. And so my view of America was like Starsky and Hutch, the Rockford Files, Kojak. I'm dating myself. But And when I first moved over here, like 25 years ago, I moved to Oregon, which is just like, it's really just like the UK, green, wet, cold. But through a variety of reasons, Qualcomm decided, who's headquartered here in San Diego, where it's beautiful and sunny and much more like what we British people see as the idealized version of America. They reached out to me, offered me a job. They wanted to get into the music business. This was just before the smartphone came about. And at the time, they were doing billions of dollars selling solitaire and Sudoku to all of us on feature phones. And they decided that the next thing was music on your phones. And they wanted some help getting into that business. So they persuaded me to move down here. I did that, and it turned out they weren't very good at it. We got a huge deal with Universal Music Group, didn't go anywhere. But what they were really good at is radios. And I ended up helping co-found Qualcomm Retail. And one of the things that Qualcomm Retail did was pioneer Bluetooth beacons, which are basically these things that help phones know where they are to a level of precision that's really useful in retail. And our first customer ended up being Apple. So Apple put all these Qualcomm Bluetooth beacons in all their stores, which is why when you go into an Apple store, it kind of moves to store mode and kind of guides you through that process. So anyway, I learned a lot about Bluetooth beacons, which at the time
are everywhere, by the way, now, because I just installed a new thing in my smart home and it says, okay, here's all the different Bluetooth beacons in your house and we want to know where they are, and that'll provide extra intelligence. So it's a fundamental technology to IoT and smart home, etc.
No, and it's a good thing. You'll have a mode. Your AI assistant in the future will know you're in your kitchen, and it'll have a sense of context as well as knowing when you're in the Apple Store. So anyway, long story long, I accumulate all this knowledge about Bluetooth beacons by working at the world's largest wireless semiconductor company, and I write a book called Beacon Technologies, which was an amazing journey of learning even more about the subject and talking to all sorts of things. And I then realized, actually, this isn't just about Bluetooth beacons. It's about the physical world and the digital world coming together. It's about the Internet of Things going beyond the Internet of expensive things, cars and appliances being connected to the Internet, to the Internet of everyday things, of food, medicine, and clothing. And so I realized there's a lot to learn. And even after I finished the book, I decided I needed to continue research and talk to interesting people. And a podcast was just really an excuse to do that. So the Mr. Beacon podcast started, and I've been on this learning journey ever since.
And it's interesting because I've had my own smart home podcast for a while. I had the number one smart home podcast called The Smart Home Show. And for a while, Bluetooth was actually becoming or trying to become, with even the push behind the Bluetooth SIG, a competitor to Wi-Fi. I think they kind of backed off on that. They don't want to necessarily be like your smart home technology, but it is for people who aren't kind of aware of all the different radio types and how Bluetooth maybe interacts within the home versus Wi-Fi. How would you describe Bluetooth's place versus the other type of things and radios like we know, like Wi-Fi, to the average person who's not like entrenched in this every day?
Yeah. Well, Wi-Fi is the de facto standard for transmitting large amounts of data. And Bluetooth was originally designed as a replacement for the wires that connected keyboards to laptops and desktop computers. And really, if you want small bits of data passed over short distances, then Bluetooth is your go-to. And if you want a big pipe that can drive file transfers and that sort of thing, then Wi-Fi is there. But there's always going to be a little bit of overlap. And actually, this area of ambient Internet of Things, the connecting of everyday things to this massive cloud of intelligence, is one of the areas where there is a little bit of overlap. And so today, the Bluetooth beacon technology that's starting to find its way into supply chains, that's finding its way into packaging, all the other wireless standards are kind of looking at it, and Wi-Fi being one of the major ones, but also cellular. And so they're all starting to work on their standards for this thing we call ambient IoT. So over the next few years, you'll start to see battery-free wireless stickers that are essentially like the Apple AirTag, only 100 times cheaper and 100 times smaller. They'll be the size of the postage stamp. And that will allow us to connect the packaging for food. It'll allow us to attach medicine, clothing, tools, and all of this stuff will suddenly go online thanks to interest from the folks at the IEEE who drive Wi-Fi, 3GPP, the third generation partnership project that drive 5G and 6G.
Yeah.
And I would say the Bluetooth SIG are ahead because they already have hundreds of millions of these battery-free Bluetooth tags that are being deployed by the likes of Walmart and Amazon to get visibility over their supply chains.
So to explain to people who are interested in the world of food distribution, there are what you talked about, these Bluetooth battery-free tags. So they're essentially radios that are essentially stickers that go on at this point now, pallets. They're not necessarily going on each little individual package of grapes or meat. Explain how that works at a high level to kind of the everyman, because it seems like kind of mystifying. How would you get something to communicate on a radio if it doesn't have a battery, if it's a little sticker? It seems kind of mystifying for an everyday person.
Yeah, well, there's, I guess, two questions. One is, how on earth can you get a sticker to talk to a phone or a Wi-Fi access point?
Right.
And then the second question is, why on earth would you want to? And, why you'd want to, maybe just a quick explanation of that. At the moment, our supply chains are just offline. So we see them. It's like someone turned the lights off, and occasionally you get a flashlight and you kind of shine it on a pallet and you say, oh, that's where this case of salmon is. And then the flashlight gets turned off, and that flashlight is, a barcode reader or these RFID readers that are so expensive that you can only have a few of them, and you only get to turn them on and use them occasionally. They're used at choke points. So basically we're running our supply chains with 19th century visibility, which is kind of very backward looking. And the future is automating it completely. So we see everything everywhere all at once. And we're measuring the location of every pallet in real time. And we're measuring the temperature and maybe even some chemical properties. And we're doing it without everyone having to be on their best behavior and doing their job in the warehouse or the store. We take out the reliance on human beings. So when we do that, we improve safety, we reduce waste, we increase shelf life, and basically the products will start to taste better, because at the moment we're breeding products for resilience because we know that they're going to get the heck kicked out of them on the way from the field to the store. If we can do a better job of looking after that food, then we can start to go back to breeding, growing strawberries for flavor and things like that. And so that's why I get terribly excited about this. But I am a techie, and I'd be very happy to talk about how it works for simply.
But we'll talk about
that's why.
It makes a lot of sense, and it's a great vision. And I think we're partway there, but it's still not like to the point where we're really have great visibility to every single product is shipping on trucks everywhere, going into every warehouse. But I think we're starting to get there. So kind of tell us where it is today in terms of deployment and where it'll be 5 to 10 years from now, so people have an idea of how much better this will get in terms of our visibility into the supply chain.
Yeah. Well, it all comes down to money and cost at the end of the day, because the people at Walmart and Amazon and Vons and all these, they're kind of dealing with very small margins. And so they're looking at, on one hand, the cost of labor to do scanning. The other hand, products that aren't in great shape, they start to go a funny color. People don't want to buy them, all of that sort of stuff. So where we are at the moment is barcodes ubiquitous, but you have to pay people to scan them, and you get very intermittent snapshots of things, and they don't measure temperature. So we've probably all seen stacks of pallets of perishable products in supermarkets and cafes just sitting there, and you're like, oh my God, this is like a food safety nightmare that's just waiting to happen. So I would say that's where 90% of our food supply chain is with barcodes. But we do have this thing called RFID, radio frequency identifiers, which are really the I would say the predecessors of what we call ambient IoT, and this technology's been around certainly for 2 decades, arguably since World War II. But the folks at Procter & Gamble and MIT saw the opportunity to start automating scanning, and now Walmart, for instance, has deployed an awful lot of RFID technology, actually less in food and more about apparel, because the cost of these readers, the handheld scanners, are about $1,000. If you want to put a reader around a loading dock, then that's you're talking 5 to 10,000, maybe even more. And so it just becomes very expensive to deploy this technology. But Bluetooth's everywhere. All of us have a Bluetooth reader in our pocket or our purse. All of the Wi-Fi access points that are deployed today, they already have a Bluetooth radio. So why don't we just kind of tweak that software and rely on the genius of some amazing semiconductor R&D folks that have developed essentially a computer that can power itself. That's what these postage stamp size ambient IoT stickers are. And they do a couple of things that have never been done before. One is they can harvest energy from radio waves. So when RFID was introduced 20, 30 years ago, we didn't have radios everywhere, but now we do. You probably couldn't count the number of radios that are in your phone, your Wi-Fi access point, your television.
So it's getting power from your phone or another radio close to it. That radio signal is giving it power, and it wakes up and it transmits using that power.
That's the promise of it. And today, we're just on the cusp of that. So today, the radios that are being deployed by these gigantic retailers are Bluetooth radios that have been juiced up a bit to do the energizing. But basically, those chips are so much cheaper than the RFID reader chips, and the devices can be tweaked. And so basically, the cost of infrastructure to read these tags automatically is going down, down, down. And over the next 1 to 3 years, we're actually already to the point where these tags can harvest energy from the mobile devices, the Zebra devices, that if you've been in any of these stores, you see these readers are Zebra devices. So we're just on the cusp of being able to get the energy from all of the devices that are surrounding us. And that's the unlock. We are probably 2 or 3 months away from, if Amazon decided to do a firmware upgrade on all of the Amazon Echo devices and Ring doorbells, and those could energize these battery-free tags in our home. And that's when we get to the nirvana of end-to-end visibility of supply chains, where you can see it at the point of manufacturing, distribution, sales, and then in the home. And at that point, when you have end-to-end, you can do amazing things, including dynamic expiry dates, where you basically talk to Alexa and you say, when is this milk or this salmon or this shrimp going to expire? And it will know, because rather than guessing, which is essentially what we do today, we have an estimate. We will have looked at the temperature over time that product has been exposed to, and we can come up with a 21st century model of how long the product will last. And that's
super interesting.
That's when things really change.
Yeah. I mean, I would imagine there's some obviously opt-ins that the consumers would have to do, but we talk a lot about, and we've talked a lot about at the Smart Kitchen Summit, of like, how do we make a refrigerator smarter? How can we know when things are going to expire? And this is maybe one route to that. So I want to talk a little bit about that. But before we do, I want to kind of talk about the information that these are transmitting, because there's a whole bunch of innovation that's happened within IoT. For example, in the food value chain, in ripening rooms, there's a company called Strela that basically does gas detection, because produce emits a gas. Its AI algorithm can understand, okay, it's this far towards ripening, worth this, the ripening manager, let's get this to the store. So when I can imagine, once you start to connect that type of information, gas sensors and ripening detection, with Bluetooth sensors that can transmit this information, I think it's going to be pretty dynamic and pretty interesting. So what type of information are we transmitting over these Bluetooth beacons? And are they connecting into these things like ripening and gas detection, color changing labels, or other types of things?
The short answer is yes, they can measure chemistry of individual items, and they can be there in the ripening room to help get better visibility without someone having to go in there and do a measurement. They can continuously measure these things. They can look at the acids that are produced on meat and fish as they start to age. But that is, I would say, the exception rather than the rule. What they're really focusing on at the moment is temperature and identity. And one of the revolutions that is going on very quietly is the move to serialization. So we're all used to seeing the barcodes on products. The standards folks at GS1 call them global trade identification numbers. And that identifies the product model, if you like. This is shrimp, and it comes from X vendor. But where we're moving to is serialization, where every single item has a unique digital twin, a digital product passport, as the Europeans are starting to call them in the mandatory standards that they're driving into the market. And so you're already seeing this in categories like apparel. So if you were to buy a Ralph Lauren polo shirt and look in the label, you'd see a QR code. You can scan it, and that will go to the individual digital product passport that will tell you when this product, what day was this product made, where did it come from? Most importantly, is it actually authentic? And so that has implications in terms of authenticity and safety. And for various reasons, this is a trend that is starting to roll out across product categories because it helps with reducing counterfeit, gray market. It can also help you with expiry dates. So when your friendly herbs and spices manufacturer puts a serialized QR code on there, it doesn't need to even be one of these smart tags. If your cumin has got a unique identity associated with it, you can go up to the cloud, you can scan the QR code, and you can see when it was made. And so you can start to use that information combined with AI assistance to help you manage what's in your spice drawer and your pantry and get on top of expiry dates and using food before it goes bad, which is a huge opportunity to reduce waste and reduce cost.
A big talk 5 years ago was blockchain to do that. Is there blockchain that's powering any of these digital identities or the expiry dates, or is it a different type of technology behind the serialization?
I'm going to be candid with you. I'm not a huge believer in blockchain. I mean, I know it exists, but I think it's one of these technologies that was massively hyped. And
I agree, but yeah, it had some uses though.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm not like never touch it. IBM was one of the biggest early movers in this space.
As was Walmart.
They had a platform working with IBM to use blockchain. IBM recently, just in the last few weeks, canned that project. It's a lot of cost, and you can achieve a lot of the things that you want to achieve with good old-fashioned lightweight database technology. So, in terms of immutable records for currency and so forth, I think it's clearly proved its worth there. But I am a little skeptical on whether it's ever going to establish real value in food chains.
So let's talk about the home again, because you talked about this vision of Amazon rolling out an update to Alexa or whatever on the smart speakers. I think that's really potentially interesting. I see lots of potential red flags for consumer privacy experts saying, whoa, let's dial this back. So it would have to be almost an opt-in saying, hey, do you want, for example, Amazon will brand it smart inventory system or Alexa intelligence for in your fridge or whatever. Is that kind of how you see it rolling out, where Amazon would give it a brand, consumers opt in, and then all of a sudden the Amazon Alexa's knowing how fresh your milk is, knowing how fresh your veggies are?
Yeah. So privacy is a huge deal with this. And I think Amazon are very sensitive to that. So I think if and when they do this, and this is just me speculating, then they'll do it with privacy in mind. I believe that privacy, when done badly, can kill products. And I remember there was a company whose name, maybe thankfully I've forgotten, but they started putting Bluetooth beacons in clothing, and they tried to sort of gamify it, and they just got crucified. And basically within 6 months they disappeared because they just didn't show value. And let's face it, we're willing to sacrifice privacy in exchange for value, but it wasn't done well. There wasn't clear value there. So I think people will accept this, but they'll need to do it. It will need to be done with some very important guidelines in place, and that's actually part of what we're working on with Ambient GPT, our product, which is a digital locker, so that people can start to control this information locally on their device. I'm a little pessimistic about where AI is going. I sort of have this dual view of artificial intelligence, which is, this is amazing. This is why I got into computing years and years ago. But at the same time, there's a real chance it's going to kill us all or enslave us. I think we just have to kind of live with that duality in our heads and do our best to try and make sure that this technology evolves in a positive direction. And a key part of that is getting very mindful about privacy. And I think about it a lot with my relationship with ChatGPT, which knows all about my medical history, my legal questions, my tastes, my preferences. And you look at the companies behind this with Facebook and so forth. They don't have the best track record as far as giving us agency over this data. And I think it's really important that we establish some models that empower consumers so that they can control the data, which means knowing what data is there, getting control of who sees it, and doing that in a way that's easy. And I'm sure someone from Facebook or Meta would say, yes, you can inspect your privacy data, but you basically need to have incredible fortitude and perseverance to do that. And we believe that it should be as simple as having a conversation with your assistant to decide which brands you want to share your data with.
And by assistant, you mean your virtual assistant?
Your virtual assistant. So, at the moment, ChatGPT is just soaking all this up and the data is living centrally. And we believe the data should be living on your device and only you should access it. And it should be fed to ChatGPT and then portable, so that if you decide that you want to go to Grok or whatever the other Gemini, you can port that data. You have people should have the right to move their data, and this shouldn't be a banking relationship where you're more likely to change your spouse than you are to change your bank. And if it's famously difficult to do, but it's going to be even more difficult to do that very soon, given everything that we're confiding our AI assistants with. So we believe that if it's not us, it needs to be someone competing with us, building the tools to manage our digital locker that will have all the information about what's in our drinks cabinet, our medicine cabinet, our pantry, and our wardrobe. Because there's no question that there are 21st century benefits to doing that. And AI will start to absorb that, but we need to give individuals and brands control. So it's not just us schmucks like you and me, or me, you're not a schmuck, but I'm like just shambling my way through this world. The brands that we all know and in some cases love are about to get disintermediated by this AI thing, because all this money that's been raised to buy these AI data centers, those debts need to get paid off, and it's not going to get paid off by helping you to write speeches and opinion pieces. It's going to be about buying things, and that's when the data gets serious.
Yeah, I could definitely see a digital first retailer like Amazon, who also has product disintermediating. But I don't think it's easy to disintermediate food production, because I think, and sure, Amazon could be in food production, but I think, it's a low margin business. I don't even know if OpenAI would want to be in food production. So I could see the platform guys, if they are aligned with already a retail distribution, maybe it's Google, they can disintermediate. So when you say that you see food getting disintermediated, what do you mean by that? Do you mean the distribution side, the digital side?
It's about purchasing. So all of these companies, if you look at the integrations that all of the AI companies have done, and they're now doing that, they're doing connections with all these third-party software suites. Number one in those connections is payment platforms. So they're getting ready to basically be your personal procurement agent. And they'll be great at it because they know you better than anyone has ever known anyone. So they'll know what you like. And they'll also have incredible product information. And how is Grok going to compete with OpenAI and Gemini? Part of it is going to be on price. When you hire a purchasing agent as a company, it's like, I want to see you, get some extra points of margin for our company. So when you say, oh, I want a hamburger, or I need some steak or whatever, then those procurement agents will go out, they'll scour the internet and they'll know what you like, but they'll also try and save you money because they know that's going to be a key to their usage and their volume. And they're going to do it. One of the things they're going to do is by not sharing data. So the disintermediation is about the data flow. It's like, it's very difficult to get information out of Google and Facebook about everything that they know. And certainly those platforms are not going to be sharing the data with all of the CPG companies that they are buying from. And so, all of this hard work that brands have been doing around advertising and packaging, a lot of it will start to lose its potency. And we're seeing it in just the traffic to websites. There's been
SEO is dead. And I think
exactly.
Cloudflare just announced that they're not going to allow agents to basically, and Cloudflare controls our website, The Spoon. It's kind of where we put our domain through. And so the battle for knowledge is on, and there's basically companies like Cloudflare, they're saying you can't have this information. So it's just a really interesting time to watch.
It is. If you're a CMO at a CPG company and you've mastered the art of placement and positioning and great recipes on your website and those end cap displays, then I'm not saying that's irrelevant. What I'm saying is it will be very important for you to figure out how are you going to have some agency and connection with consumers when these AI agents are helping to do the shopping for your customers. And it's going to be, don't expect the AI companies to share the data with you. I believe that what we have to do is figure out ways of containing these AI systems and allowing brands and consumers to have a direct dialogue so that the brands can understand not just what people are buying, but what people are using, which is very sensitive. But when they do that, they can do a much better job of managing their supply chains. So at the moment, the state of the art is Amazon knows all about what we're buying. But when we buy something, they don't know whether we use it. And the opportunity that I believe in is end-to-end visibility, because when we do that, we can do a better job of making better products that people use, and we can start to go from supply chains to demand chains. And demand chains are basically this concept where you're getting real-time demand signals up and down the supply chain that are informing the production and distribution to be much more efficient. And that's going to help reduce cost and improve quality.
I see the internal tension where you're excited about the technology, but you're also scared about it. And I kind of hear you kind of talking to both of these things where you say, hey, you see you're excited about this real time supply chain signals being sent out and informing what's going on to make better products. But then that's also going to feed the Borg and feed these agents. So like, I see there's a tension there.
There is a tension there. And, for me, it started when I was 6 years old and my parents took me to see 2001: A Space Odyssey. I don't know if you've ever seen that movie, but for those people who haven't, and basically HAL, the computer, kills the crew because he feels like the crew on the spaceship are getting in the way of the mission. And so I saw that and I'm like, HAL is great. I love this. I want to do computer science. And that sort of set me off on my career. But really, it speaks to this dilemma that we have. We're creating this technology that very soon is going to be smarter than us. And if you look at what the experts say, it's not good. And we're not talking about certain obliteration. There's this concept of P-doom, the probability of doom. And if you speak to an AI agent and you say, what's your P-doom? They'll give you a percentage of how likely they think it is that everything goes terribly wrong. And that number ranges from roughly 46% down to 5%. But, if Unilever or Procter & Gamble came out with a product and they said, oh, you're just going to love it, but there is like a 1 in 20 chance that it's going to exterminate the human race, then they would be shut down straight away. But we're not doing that, and I'm not advocating we do. We can't. This is beyond human nature. It's the power of evolution, and we just need to do our best to make sure things turn out as well as they possibly can.
I guess it's because you've been in beacons for so long, you're saying, hey, we really want this technology in because it'll help make better decisions, but also it's going to be feeding information into these large systems that potentially could like accelerate our extinction. Like, I guess, is it just because you've been at it so long? Why, if you have such a high skepticism of what the ultimate outcome is going to be, how can you be pushing this technology, I guess?
It's not your Bluetooth beacon that's going to kill you. It's the AI that is 1,000 times more. But
why would you want to feed the beacon, feed the model and AI more information with beacons, though?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think you have to decide what's inevitable. And auto ID, the concept of machines starting to get in touch with the physical world, it's happening no matter what we do. So the best we can do, Elon Musk talks about the best way of predicting the future is to make it happen. And so that is what I believe. I think we should be trying to make sure that technology is used for good. And the potential for good is incredible. I mean, we're all hurtling towards this climate crisis. We're in it. It's clear that we're not going to stop drilling for oil or reducing our power consumption. I actually believe that AI and ambient IoT is one of our best bets for fighting climate change because, if we move to a demand chain where we can see the supply chain, we can literally halve the carbon in our supply chains. Yeah. And the reason why I think people will do that is we can also halve the cost at the same time. And we've seen this before. Like if you think about vending machines, what's changed with vending machines? I think they're fascinating devices that over the last 20 years, they're all online. And so you don't see big trucks delivering supplies to vending machines anymore. You see small vans because they know what's been bought in real time. And so they pre-kit the deliveries and they stock exactly what's needed. And so suddenly the cost of running a vending machine network dropped dramatically. So I think it's inevitable. And our best bet of making things happen the way we want, preserving our agency and privacy, and empowering people rather than having them plugged into this matrix style stack of pods, is by showing that people can make money by doing the right thing. So that's my personal philosophy.
Right. Well, that's a good, helpful message to end on. Steve Statler, if people want to find out more information, they could find you at AMB.AI and on LinkedIn.
Yes, indeed. Yeah. So search for AMB.AI or Ambient GPT. And we'd love to talk to you, not just about the product, but we also do consulting because we know that it's kind of a learning journey and it's a very exciting time. It's a great time to be alive. And we've got lots of opportunities to use technology for good.
Thanks, Steve.
Thank you, Michael.
Well, that's it. A lot to think about, I think, after this conversation with Steve. I'm thinking about how ultimately the AI systems, AI platforms will become involved in the food system and how much information we want to give to these systems and how much of our privacy we want to hand over as individuals. So it's a really interesting conversation. I appreciate Steve for coming on the show. As always, check out the other podcasts that we have. Go to thespoon.tech/podcast. We have lots of great conversations with lots of great hosts and subscribe to a few. All right, folks, we'll talk to you next week.
If you enjoyed this episode, why not share it with a friend? And don't forget to give us a 5-star review. You'll find more content like this on thespoon.tech/podcasts.